And this is what we have on the front page of the DN. It says the 100 million shilling dialogue. Well, a costly affair. When the Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja bipartisan talks started, National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah rejected a proposal to hold the talks at a five-star hotel, as he insisted on the need to cut costs. But in an ironical twist, the nation can now reveal the team is seeking 106 million for the 60-day talks, with a big chunk earmarked for allowances and retreats both in Naivasha and Mombasa. It's a splash on page 4 and 5 of the DN, if you can have a look at that. And there you have it. This big chunk of the millions earmarked for allowances to members of the talks team will be able to facilitate those retreats in Naivasha and Mombasa. And of course, a budget document that was prepared by the Secretariat and adopted by the National Dialogue Committee shows that this particular big chunk is expected to facilitate those things. This document, exclusively obtained by the nation, indicates that the ongoing stakeholders engagement that started on Monday is set to run until Friday and will consume 5.9 million, much of the amount going into allowances, conference facilities, refreshments, also about 10 million spent on document translation. Then you have so you have publication of copies, about 1,000 copies, which will gobble up about 15 million at a cost of 15,000 per unit. Another 9.7 million earmarked for contingency, being 10% of the total project cost. Let me begin with you, Abdullahi. So looking at this, and I mean, so this is what the nation has established according to what apparently the National Dialogue Committee is seeking to be able to wind up this conversation. Coming at a time, by the way, top of the agenda, of course, has been the issue of the cost of living. What do you make of it? Well,
I think, first of all, the people who have led the dialogue are just the same people who have been leading Kenya's political scene, which are elites. These are people who are highly paid, most of them in parliament, in different positions. And when you tell us you're going to have a dialogue of 100 million, to some people 100 million is a small money, but it is not. When you want to have a government that is already, borrowing a lot of money, we can't raise our own income in terms of tax, because the moment the government said it's going to increase this or it can enforce the taxes, yes, but now people will be adjusting on how to spend. Now that fuel is a bit expensive, if let's say 50% or 40% of people who drive in Nairobi decide to keep their cars at home, it means that the guy who was washing the car at the car wash will not get a job, the mechanic will not get a job, the spare parts will not get jobs because they are not rolling. So it will have ripple effect on other things. So people will decide on how to spend or how to. So when it's just the elites trying to entertain themselves. I mean, when you say you're going to have a dialogue of printing these and that, do we even need to have this dialogue now? Because it was decided by Raila and Ruto. They took it to parliament. Most Kenyans may have agreed or did not agree. So it just looks at how the Kenyan, and a majority of these people are from poor backgrounds. So they think the moment they got some cars and being parliament, they became so special. They forgot that majority of Kenyans cannot feed themselves or even get 1 meal a day. So this is just one of the misplaced priorities, to entertain Kenyans and keep hope and say we are going to do this and that, because majority of the things they are discussing, they can't have it in parliament. It has to go for a referendum. Now, we have already a decade-old constitution, 10 plus years. We have a devolution that is 10 years, still struggling. We have a national government that is keeping 80% of our budget. I mean, if you raise, our budget is 3.9 and then you're only raising 2 billion and then you're borrowing 1.9 trillion, and you can borrow, like in June, one day you borrow about 235 billion and then you're spending 20 billion on hospitality and foreign and domestic traveling. All right. The Kenya Kwanza priority is upside down, and every day... But this is an initiative that is not necessarily a Kenya Kwanza, project. I mean, this is something that the other side... Kenyans did not ask for a dialogue between the two. Kenyans did not ask for them to have even these discussions.
All right.
Right now, they are 1 year old. They were supposed to stabilize the fuel, because right now they are saying the food is going down. I mean, how is food going down when majority of people in this country are using generators to fuel, you know, their engines, diesel, which is expensive.
All
so
right.
how is that going to incur into costs?
And we'll come back to that. We'll talk about that in a moment. I just want to get the initial thoughts on this particular story, Arnold. We're talking about, apparently, according to this document, the co-chairs of this committee, that's Wiper Leader Kalonzo Musyoka, you have the National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, entitled to an allowance of 50,000 shillings per sitting. And that's going to be about a total of 20 sittings there. The other members will be getting about 40,000 shillings in allowance per sitting. That's quite a hefty amount, don't you think?
Well, the problem with numbers, especially when it's about money, it's quite a subjective thing if you talk about the numbers as they are, specifically if you're going to look at it quantitatively. But if you put the human face, if you bring in the life side of numbers, then you actually could see how heavy this is. First of all, it's just important to remind everybody else that is supporting the dialogue process that if we start complaining about 100 million shillings now, then we probably do not know what the dialogue really seeks, because eventually the project...
Do you think Kenyans know what the dialogue seeks?
I'm actually building a point that if you complain about 100 million shillings going to dialogue, then you just don't know where this dialogue project is actually going, because it eventually is going to cost us hundreds of billions. If you look at the proposals being made up to now, it will cost this country hundreds of billions of shillings. But like I said, if you give the human face to these numbers, then probably you see the immorality that comes with this. And that is why some of us have actually been opposed 100% to this dialogue process. Right. First of all, this is about the same CDF. Most constituencies get CDF around this figure, the national government CDF. You know how little that money is, but you also know how effective it is in some instances. Let me just give you a little bit of numbers you can think of. With 100 million shillings, you can pay for 4,500 secondary school students, especially the day scholars. The capitation money that is about 22,244 shillings that government currently actually grants. With that money, you can actually take care of about 4,500 students in secondary schools. 4,500 students might not be so much from where some other people sit, but I can tell you even one child taken through school is so much relief to a parent somewhere, and it could change the story of a nation. Now, let's go back to what it could do for primary school. It's actually a whopping 70,500 pupils with the current capitation that is actually given. If you're going to put, I think the government puts it at about 1,400 and something. The capitation government gives for primary school kids. So that is 70,000 pupils that can actually benefit from this particular money. But you see, of course, people will argue that a nation cannot be looked at from one perspective. But the proposals that are coming out of this particular process, that's why I actually said that if we start bickering, and the National Dialogue, they call it the National Dialogue Committee NDC, for me is actually an elite bickering club, that the elites are meeting, bickering, and then passing on the bill to the people to pay. Because, of course, we'll get into the substance of that later on. But this is it.
All right.
With the kind of economic situation we are in as a country.
We are not. So you also feel this is a misplaced priority?
Yes, I'm actually saying with the kind of the economic situation we are in today, most of the proposals here are leading us to a referendum. On the day you give Kenyans a referendum, when they are as angry as they are, then you have got the 2005 effect. The first thing is that it will actually, currently we have got two major players in politics. We're talking about William Ruto and Raila Odinga, right? But then, now that they are on one side, if you bring a referendum today, you actually are bringing in a third pillar, because then a lot of people are going to oppose this thing for what it is at this particular point. Because a lot of people are looking for solutions in the now. I know a number of these proposals could be speaking and looking at the bigger picture. But this is not healthy, it is not wise, it is not safe, it's not even sensitive. Okay. Yeah.
Let's hear from Fanya Mambo. What do you think? Should we Fanya some Mambo on this?
A very good morning. I think to start with, the essence of the dialogue at Bomas should not be wished away, it should not be washed away. Kenya loses a lot of money every election cycle because of election-related violence. And you can realize, like now from 2026, there will be nothing happening in this country other than campaigns. So usually a year to elections, campaigns have begun, the economy stalls. And a year after elections, the people are fighting about the results of the elections that have happened in the past. So I think the dialogue should continue at Bomas. Some of the things they are discussing are important, but the cost of this dialogue is what needs to be regulated. I do not think that it makes sense in an economy such as our own to have people spending 50,000, 40,000 shillings in allowances per day. But I think they are borrowing from State House. The control of budget the other day told us that State House was allocated 2.3 billion in 1 month. 2.3 billion in 1 month means that State House is spending 77 million shillings every day. Every hour they are gobbling 3 million shillings. So then you wonder how many people are employed in State House. How can you spend 77 million shillings on just eating? Even if you are, and when you think about it, the cost of one boda, I was doing the mathematics, that every single day, the people in State House are eating 500 bodas. Every single day they are eating 500 bodas. If this was a country that cared about mwananchi na kuunda serikali na mama mboga na mtu wa boda, really they shouldn't be gobbling 77 million shillings a day. So I think the fish rots from the head. What is happening from Bomas is a reflection of what is happening in so many other state sectors. That there's a lot of wastage of public resources. And that's why we need to start first by saying, let us stop this nonsense of overtaxation of Kenyans. Because it makes no use to come and overburden Kenyans with taxes and then spend this money in such a stupid manner. If you ask me, why would you kill Kenyans with taxes and then spend 77 million shillings in a day, or leave the country and go to look for preachers to come here and preach to us and pay a lot of money for them to come in private jets as if we do not have our own God?
Then
so
maybe we should start with this, the 100 million.
I can tell you,
right?
I can tell you for sure, this 100 million is extravagant. I have said that. The talks are critical, but it doesn't mean, I mean, many Kenyans, if they were to go to Bomas, they would be told to volunteer. If today there was public participation, Kenyans would be told, jilipie fare ukuje Bomas, upeane your views, alafu rudi nyumbani. But when a politician comes to Bomas, they are paid 50,000 shillings a day. This is the inequality that we do not want. So there is nothing wrong with Kenyans having a dialogue. There is nothing wrong with leaders sitting down and agreeing on the things that affect this country. But there's everything wrong with charging us exorbitantly for having a conversation about us.
All right, and we'll get to the substance of some of the proposals that have been made before the National Dialogue Committee, and really that's still the same question if we're heading the referendum way. In a moment, let me also just give you quick updates on what else is captured. You can get this on the DN.